Hello and welcome back. You're listening to Coffee Guy, and today I've got a brand new review for you. This time I'm taking a look at the British Tier 5 Premium, the Sherman Grizzly 1. And now this is the unskinned version of the one with the big Canadian flag all over it. But before I get into doing that review, I wanted to say a big shout out to all of you, my loyal followers. I've just hit 30 subscribers, so that's quite a milestone. Hopefully in coming months and that I can get that up further. Hopefully I'll be at 100 soon. May have to do some kind of a subscriber giveaway or something once I hit that point. Now, back to the Sherman Grizzly. What is it? And why am I doing the review on it now? Well, I'll answer the second question first. It's been sat in my garage for a while, ever since I got it stuck onto a big bundle with 70% off a little while ago. I've not really played it much, and because I've not really played it much, I've not really thought to review it. But this weekend, long story short, I was trying to grind out one of the free loot chests on the long haul to top my gold up enough so that I could buy the Malbreaker on the weekly discount without having to add any more of my money to the game, which did manage to do in the end. And as part of that, I was just going through playing some of the tanks I hadn't played in a while, and this led me on to the Grizzly, and I thought, right, let's see how good it is, give it a go. So, getting back to that first question then, what is it? It's an M4 A1 hull, so the base hull that you get on the American Tech Tree Tier 5 Sherman. It's got a slightly different turret. It's got a turret that's more akin to the turret you'd get on the Ripper, which is another premium Tier 5 Sherman, and it's got the same M3 L37 gun. So how does it shape up and compare to some of the other Sherman premiums out there? First of all, let's have a look at what else the British have got available in their Tech Tree line. So the British don't have any other premium Shermans, but what they do have is the Sherman 3, which you can see has got, rather confusingly, the M4 A2 hull, which is much more angular, looking like this. Personally, I think this looks a lot nicer. And it's also got the same turret that the Grizzly has. And a noticeable advantage that the Sherman 3 gets is that it gets the really quite good 76mm M1A1 gun, so you can finally dump that piece of rubbish M3 L37 gun. What else can you get? Well, you can obviously stick with the base American M4. So this one, again, like I said, gets the M4A1 hull. That's like that rounded. It was a composite hull, I believe. But you get a slightly different turret when you fully upgrade this, which I think gets a bit more armour all around, whereas the Grizzly's got a bit more armour on the front and weaker armour on the sides and back, but we'll get into that later on. But the M4 from the American Tech Tree has a massive advantage of giving you that 105mm derp gun, which I don't think any of the other premium Shermans allow you to do. Obviously you've got the Canadian flag variant of the Grizzly. It's exactly the same as the one that I'm reviewing, it's just the paint that's different, nothing else. Personally, I'd say the paint job probably looks a bit nicer in my opinion, and if you happen to be Canadian, that's obviously the one to go for. Now, you also have the M4A2E4 Sherman. Unskinned looks like this. The Ripper is exactly the same tank. This one gets similar turret to the Grizzly, but it gets a much stronger hull with much stronger armour on the front, and it's called the E4 because it's got a different suspension system, I think, compared to the traditional M4s. So in real life it was a Canadian tank. It was an attempt to copy the M4 and just increase capacity, but as it turned out, American capacity was enough and a lot of these tanks were cancelled. But what they also had was dry-pin tracks, which meant they could use no rubber in them, and rubber was a scarce commodity because of the Japanese invasion of Malaya at the time, so it allowed the Allies to get around that, so it was quite a nifty innovation. And those tanks that were cancelled. A lot of them ended up being converted into the Sexton II, which is the artillery on the British tech tree. And after the war, a lot of them were given away to countries like Portugal, where they soldiered on into the 1980s, so it's got a very illustrious career. So that's enough talking about the history of the tank. Let's jump into some of the stats behind it. So, you've got a 400 horsepower engine, so you've got about 13.31 horsepower per tonne, which is pretty average, I think, for Shermans. The only one that's significantly better I can think of is the M4 Improved, which I will look at shortly. You've got the hideous M3 L37 gun, and this one I have found is particularly bad. And whilst it's still fairly quick, that accuracy of 0.46 is a nightmare. You get pretty good rotation, 38 degrees per second, and your turret traverse is 39 degrees per second as well, with a pretty standard 370 metres view range. I think that is actually the same across all of the Shermans. Signal range of 570 metres, pretty good for this tier. And I think your penetration on the ammo is the same across all of the Shermans as well. And a similar crew layout. And again, the armour's not going to give you any surprises to the other Shermans. It's not particularly great. So you get a standard 38 on the sides, which I think is very similar for all of the M1A1 holds. 50mm on the front. You get some nice little big patches, 63mm welded onto the side, which are there to give the crew air protection. And you get quite a nice consistent 76mm plate on the front of the turret. But there's where it ends, I'm afraid. And just to give you a bit of a comparison, well, actually no, let's first look at the ammo itself and how much it costs. So pretty cheap for the armour piercing, 56 silver. You get up to 138 damage there and up to 115 penetration. So in terms of equipment, I've gone for pretty standard coated optics, gun laying drive and gun rammer. Everything on these Shermans is just to get that gun up to a usable standard, and to be honest, even with it all, I still don't think it's usable. It's god awful. I really hate the thing. So what I wanted to do now, before I jump into some gameplay on this, is just to give you a comparison of that armour to some of the other Shermans. So a while back, we had a tank bowl, and the winning side got the champion M4, and it ended up being a Russian one. And this one is worth noting because whilst it also has the M4 A1 composite hull, and so the armour on it is the same, it does have a slightly different turret. You actually get, it's really unusual for Shermans, it's only 64 on the front, which is a bit weaker than on the Grizzly, but you get 64 all around the side, so you get a bit more side turret armour on this as well. And what you obviously also get as well is those little sandbags, which count as an extra, well, it's only 8 mils of armour, but it's something you can throw off HE, and you get a little bit of it on the front as well, just to beef up your hull a bit. Obviously, what that M4 champion doesn't have is the depression that you get on the gun of the Grizzly, which is -12. You only get -10 on here, and generally the gun stats otherwise in terms of accuracy are just as bad on here. I think you're looking at 0.46 as well. It's awful. But what we do have to compare is the M4 Sherman. Now on the M4 improved Sherman, you still only get 51 mils of armour on the front, but you get much thicker side and rear armour. You've got 51 on the sides and 64 on the back, and it is sloped. It is sloped very nicely indeed. And the same goes for the turret. It's the same layout as for the Grizzly, 76 on the front and 51 on the sides and back, but again it is sloped, and so it really does help you out. And it's not to mention the fact that this tank has a more accurate gun at the cost of it being a little bit slower. It's also a lot faster as well. And so if I was to take all of those factors together, and you were just somebody who wanted a premium Sherman, you weren't too fussed what country it was from, and you weren't too fussed about the fact that it wasn't historically accurate, because the M4 Improved was only ever a blueprint, then I would say go for the M4 Improved. It's got the best balance of protection to speed to firepower. If you're the kind of person who's particularly fussed about armour, on the other hand, as we can see, you want to go for the Ripper or its unskinned variant, and that is purely because you get that relatively large 64mm of armour on the front, which is an extra, what, 13 above all of the other Shermans. You still got the same on the side and back, but you get a nice plate on the front of the turret as well, which gives you 76. Another trade-off I found is that this tank, I feel, gives you the worst gun performance. So swings and roundabouts. So if you want best all-round, M4 Improved. If you want to go for the armour, I'd take the Ripper. Now, unfortunately, what this does mean is that the Grizzly is redundant, I think, based on the stats, unless you happen to be Canadian and you want a Canadian tank, in which case get the flag version, or you're particularly fussy about having a tier 5 British medium premium. But if that was the case, you know, if you're in it for gun depression, because this has got pretty good gun depression at -12, go for the Matilda Black Prince. You get -12.5. And for all other purposes, for a general medium with good armour, good firepower, just go and get the Matilda Defiance if it needs to be a premium. Honestly, the only reason I think why you would want this particular one, this unskinned version, is if you were obsessed with Sherman tanks and you really wanted to have a British basic Sherman tank. So, without much further ado, let's jump into some gameplay and see what this tank is capable of. So we've jumped in at Comparative here. A little bit of like blind driving for me, apologies to the poor guy that I rammed off the road there. So I'm going for my usual spot in a medium on this map, which is the little hill over here on about that D8 line. So it gives you some good spots of the enemy team usually as they try and come around. You can see this tank's got pretty good mobility. Pretty good power to weight ratio too, it doesn't slow too much when you get hit by stuff. But as with all of the Shermans, the thing you've got to watch out for is that you are quite tall. You are very tall. And so whilst you do have that gun depression, it can be sometimes a little bit hard to use it because you stick out like a sore thumb, especially when you're on a small map like this. And here we go, trying to put that M3 gun to work on a fast moving target. You can just see the accuracy is abysmal. And I know there's Panzer IV roaring up as well, and I don't want to be the first thing he sees, so I'm going to try and get out there. And my thought at the moment was I'll try and defend RT, and I know there's a slope that I can get on down the back here, and I can try and use that gun depression a bit. And I've been very lucky bouncing stuff off the back of the tank there. So I just thought I'd try and get into position here. But unfortunately, you can see my team is starting to fold. It's starting to fold pretty badly. And I don't know if it's just me, but I found this weekend in general, the team quality has been abysmal. It's either a complete sweeping success and your team's wiped out the enemy before you've even got to where you want to go to, or it's a bit like this, whereas they start just crumbling all around you. So I was trying to take some pot shots, but you can see the combination of our losses and the abysmal accuracy on that gun are making it quite difficult. We're also in a bit of a crap position because of the M5A1 who's stuck over there spotting for the enemy. And you get the impression of where this game is going to go. And this can happen quite a lot in the Grizzly because you are such a dedicated support tank. You've got no real staying power and you haven't got the offensive power to push battles in your favour either. You're just kind of left trying to take pot shots from the background, pick off stragglers and that, And in this kind of situation, when your team's crap, there's nothing you can do. You're just 3 XP. At least I got a kill, which is probably more than can be said for the most of the team there. So yeah, this kind of gameplay is probably something you should get used to in the Grizzly. So, up next, I'm going to give you what happens when your team is a bit more competent. And show you what the Grizzly can do in that kind of situation. So, we're on Arctic region. We are in a tier 6 game, mid-tier. Now I was pondering at this point, do I go up onto that ridge line about F4 and try to see if I can spot? I thought, I'm going to be a big target, got no accuracy, I'll probably just take a lot of hits up there. So I decided to go for the corner up along the B1 line, because usually that's a good point to try and hold and spot for. And it looked like we had support going up there, and that's the trick. If you're going to go there, you've got to make sure you've got plenty of people with you in case you get rushed by the enemy. But again, you can see it's got speed, it's pretty good at getting into positions early. Or should I say, actually, it's probably better at keeping up with your allies. You can support and advance quite easily, you're not going to get left behind. You probably don't really want to be doing what I'm doing though, which is rushing off a bit far ahead. And I know I'm far ahead now and I'm starting to think, right, I'm not going to go any further, I'll see if anybody comes up to help. And I decided, right, I'm not getting any help, let's go back. But as soon as I do so, everybody decides, right, we're not spotting anything here, let's push on up. So, do a nice little U-turn and see if we can help them out. Yeah, I mean, I was going to see if I could snipe and support, but you really do not want to be using this tank to snipe. It is just no good. I think that's one of the reasons I did quite like the Sherman 3 actually in the tech trees, because at least then you've got the option to put the 76mm firing, and I think you also get the 6-pounder on it as well, and it just makes it a much more fun playstyle. The Ram 2 is also good for that actually, if you like that 6-pounder. So again, that was point blank. I don't know where that shell went. Finally got one in into the Sentinel, which again, if you want low tier British premium medium, Sentinel's not a bad one to go for. I think it's only got the 2-pounder if I remember correctly, but you've got good speed, mobility and gun suppression. I know you're down at tier 4, but it's a really good little ridgeliner. There are just so many more British premium mediums that you could go for than this one. Anyway, so trying to make the most of all I've got, I decided to try and advance undercover and keep these guys lit up for my team so they can get some shots in. That's something you can always do if you know you're not very good at doing damage yourself, is just try and spot things for your team. Keep stuff lit up, because you'll rack up the track damage and track assisted damage. Well, spotted assisted damage is probably what I mean there. Because you're not going to be able to hit anybody's tracks on this, it's just so inaccurate. So, what can we see? We can see Stood free. Nail up there. Ooh, nice, nice shot. Nail up there. VK 30.01p. I like that one. That's the Tiger P before it gets crap when you actually get to the Tiger P. It's got a really nice combination of speed and firepower on this one. Don't really want to take him on head on. I was trying to track him, I honestly was here, and I'm just getting nowhere with it. somebody else again. I really wasn't being very good at watching where I was going on these games. Where was that guy from the looks of things? Again, yeah, shooting on the move is a very bad idea on this thing. You've got to try and aim in a little bit. Yeah, I got my second kill, which was actually pretty impressive for this tank. It might not seem like it, but that's pretty impressive. And this is pretty brave taking on a national, and I was kind of banking on my rate of fire being much better than his to get off 3 shots phase 1, which just about paid off. But yeah, so there we have it. I'm not going to make it to this guy to get the extra hit in. Good looking classic Sherman. I do like the little overhang on the back of the turret, which you don't get on the other ones. I think the slightly distressed look on the colouring to the tank's quite nice as well. It looks pretty good when you add a camo over it. But in terms of gameplay, it's bad. It's not. It's worse than all of the other premium tanks. It's got no unique selling point. So if you're a Sherman fan, you'd go for something else. If you're just looking for a British medium, you'd go for something else. You'd go for the Black Prince or the Defiance. So I really can't recommend this tank, I'm afraid. Unless you're Canadian and you want the flag one, in which case, yep, absolute respect for that. But anyway, that's me done on the Grizzly 1. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, hit subscribe, and do fill out the survey. And let me know what you think. Have I got it right on my recommendations on the premium Shermans? Would you all say the M4 improved as well? Let me know if you differ. And of course, let me know what you would like me to review next. Coffee Guy out.